Hi, and welcome back to Women Making Magic. I am so excited about today's episode with my dear friend, Crystal Cave. Crystal Cave is your celebrity wardrobe stylist. She's the founder of xocrystalcave.com and the creator of Style Icon Academy. She's an international business award winner, public speaker, and TV show host at Crystal Cave TV. She's been featured on CBS, The Huffington Post, Mind Body Green, NBC, The CW, and many more. Crystal's mission in this world is to help every woman feel like a style icon both inside and out. It's not about wearing a costume that isn't you, being over makeuped, over Botoxed, or over spanked Hollywood starlet. It's about sharing your own unique, true essence with the world through your visual communication. As a former celebrity stylist, Crystal's goal is to help every woman feel like the style icon she knows she is on the inside. Crystal has worked on teams behind some of the biggest celebrities and brands, including Taylor Swift, Mercedes, Kate Upton, and Nike, and she now utilizes those skills to help everyday women realize that great style has no size. Crystal, I am so excited to be here with you today.
I am too. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So you and I are close personal friends. We talk all the time. I've learned a lot about style from, even just being your friend and interacting with you. But I'm so curious, if you had like one personal style philosophy, what would that be?
Yeah, there's a lot of personal style philosophies, but it all comes down to really like what do you want to express to the world? It's all about self-expression. So style's not about, and this is something that I've overcome. Style's not about dressing for someone else. It's really about dressing for yourself and that self-expression. So I guess it really comes down to like what you want to express. And I know that like plays a lot in my own style, where sometimes I might be a little more preppy, but then other days I might have a little bit more of a rocker edge, and I call it playing your range. And to me, that's all just part of that greater self-expression.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I love that you alluded to your personal journey. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Let's see, do you want the long or short?
Whatever feels good to you.
So ultimately, I grew up, I always considered myself like a fat girl. At least that's what I figured I'd categorize myself. And I also got to a point when I was younger that I figured, okay, kind of like I was watching Pitch Perfect this weekend, and Fat Amy's like,
I love that movie.
Yeah. I call myself Fat Amy because I don't want you skinny bitches to call me it. And so that's how I always was when I was younger. And I also always loved art. I grew up with my mom doing like a lot of art at home. One of the perks of a stay-at-home mom was like super present and artistic. And I started to really love fashion, but I always felt like an outsider with it. Like I remember being in like 4th or 5th grade, and that's when people started to go to the mall, like in the 90s.
Yeah. It's like the cool thing.
Right. And I couldn't fit into Limited 2, which was like the cool, trendy, tween.
Yeah.
Then I think now it's like Justice. But I remember having to go to the Limited, and I felt really out of place and really old, but it was great because everything fit. And for me, a lot of my own journey within my body has been about my weight, and then also how to style fit into all of that too, because for me, I always loved it, but then I never felt like it was quite attainable for me. So, I mean,
to be stylish, you mean?
To be stylish, to be fashionable, to find clothes that actually fit my body and expressed who I was.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't until I was probably, it was a few years later that I discovered this company that had just started called Torrid, and they were actually like a spin-off of Hot Topic. They're like the plus size spin-off. I think now they might be independent. But at the time, they were like the plus size version of Hot Topic, and it was cool because I finally was able to get like kind of trendy stuff, but It was funny because I feel like I went through like a semi-goth period, not like I was wearing the makeup, but because a lot of the stuff from Hot Topic at the time, or Torrid at the time, was more Hot Topic type of look. So it was really interesting. Like throughout middle school and high school, I started to try on these like different personalities. Like I was super preppy and like, you know, went and got all the like bright polos that helped me fit in at boarding school. Totally. But then there was also the part of me that was like a little edgier and fashionable. And I really had a lot of like a style identity crisis growing up. And I watched What Not to Wear and I started to learn how to dress for my body type. But the one thing that it was really missing there was the true development of style. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a fashion designer, and I think ultimately it was because I always talk about how I saw the Titanic, and it was this like amazing visual experience that I was like, I want to do something where you can create this world for yourself. And so I think ultimately, like, I've always wanted to create my own fashion world that like is all about self-expression ultimately. But you weren't really seeing plus size brands and designers out at the time. You weren't even seeing celebrities like that. Like all the teenagers growing up now have a lot more role models than we had when we were growing up, which I think is great. I think blogging's also helped with that a lot. But instead of going to school for fashion design, I decided to go to school for business and be on a constant diet all the time. Like that was the safe, or like kind of, it was the safe thing to do, honestly. Yeah. Like I grew up in business. My family's very entrepreneurial, as you know. And I went and studied marketing. I even got my master's in advertising. I picked my master's program because you could do a fashion photo shoot, honestly. Like
that's amazing. Yeah.
I'm very much convinced that's what sealed the deal for me, was that there was a fashion concentration and I could do a fashion photo shoot. Yeah. And I loved doing all that stuff in undergrad. So continue to real life and, or adult life. And I found myself really not happy in my career. I really still wanted to do something in fashion. And I remember I was seeing a therapist at the time because I was not super happy with the transition to New York City, and life just felt overwhelming. And I was working in real estate marketing, and so we were starting to talk about different options. She's like, well, what about plus size? Like, that's your plus size. Like, that's totally something you know. And so I started to look at plus size brands and realized there weren't a lot in New York City at that time. And what I really wanted to do was go and be a stylist. This was before Rachel Zoe became really popular. I wanted to be a stylist way before it became like the trendy thing to do. Or before companies started calling their sales associates stylists. I always loved that idea of helping someone cultivate their personal style. So I ended up going to styling school, and really quickly I started working on super amazing projects. Like I think within the first 6 months, I maybe had like 5 days off. It was pretty intense, and pretty soon after that, I moved to Los Angeles because I got a job offer from Taylor Swift's team to be like a third assistant. And it was that time that I actually had my eye accident where I lost the vision in my left eye. And I do feel like I had to lose my vision to see my vision for my life, which really started to unveil itself to me. I started to really address a lot of the inner stuff that was going on with my own weight, my issues around my weight, and really started to live more and embrace my body for all that it was. And during that time, I started to realize how intrinsically my whole journey had been around both style and my body, because I always thought in order to be that like stylish person that I truly wanted to be, I had to be like at least under a size 10. So fast forward a few years, I have now created an online style school called Style Icon Academy, which takes a soul approach to style. I have a YouTube channel, and I also use my background in marketing to help female entrepreneurs really step into their brand in a visual way, especially through their personal style. So that's the long version probably of my story, but not the longest.
And I think it's so amazing. Thank you for sharing all that. There's so many nuggets in there, but what really stuck out to me was when you had the accident and lost your vision. And I love that. I mean, obviously, that's a really traumatic thing to go through, but it's such a powerful story of this idea that oftentimes we have to hit like some kind of rock bottom or something that kind of knocks us awake to help put us on the path. Like I had a nervous breakdown, you lost your vision. So can you speak more to just what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. Well, I was supposed to be moving out to LA and it was winter. And so first and foremost, I was like in my childhood bedroom in winter, which was not my vision. Winter.
This isn't what I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was this part of me that realized like there's part of of us that we really don't have control over everything. And as someone who was like, I still am a type A perfectionist. I was really trying to control everything in order to make my life work and seem together and perfect. And I still am type A and I'm a recovering perfectionist, I guess, at this point. But it's like, to me, it was really that I wanted to express myself and I wasn't doing that. And so I actually had joined a program with someone who I now consider a mentor, Sarah Jenks. She has Live More, Way Less. And that was a really big turning point for me. I remember being in my childhood bedroom, I started to do some stuff on my blog, which has now turned into my business, and started coming up with some ideas of it. And I started to realize that I had such an issue with the term plus size. And it was through Live More, Way Less that I started to just really embrace all of who I was. And it became clear to me, and I think it has revealed itself more and more as, also as my friend, the term plus size, I feel ultimately is divisive. And that's why I always had an issue with it, because I'm just me, Crystal, doing my thing in the world. My size shouldn't be relevant to whether I have access to style or not. Totally. And it was during that time that I started to just express myself. I started to heal a lot of childhood wounds. And fortunately or unfortunately, I was in the same house with my mother and dad. And so,
Perfect.
A lot of stuff confronted. But it also ultimately made me realize how supported I am by my family too. And my mom drove me to every single appointment. It was, it's when you're basically relegated to being a child again, it can bring out a lot in actually receiving support too. So I think that was also a big shift for me, is actually allowing myself to receive all the amazing abundance that was around me, while also starting to express myself more within it. Because I feel sometimes, at least for myself, and I think this is true for many women, we know we're so blessed. We have so much amazingness around us. And even when we start to receive it, we start to feel a little guilty, oh, we shouldn't have this much, or, this is too much. Or we think because we're receiving something, we have to just be good within the way it's being given to us. Totally. And so that started to get me more clear on me really breaking down a lot of what I truly needed in my life, and then actually feeling good enough to ask for it. And that started to impact my style too. I basically went into my closet when I had gotten back to LA, and I was everything I own in here looks like I'm going to a funeral, which is kind of depressing. And I started to integrate more color and less black into everything that I was wearing.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. And I think that's such a powerful, I know a big part of what you're about is that inner work, doing that inner work, right? And connecting to your soul, and then letting that be expressed in your style. So that story to me is just another example of all that inner work you've been doing and changes. And then you get back to your house and you're this doesn't reflect me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny, because even as a stylist, a lot of times if you look at most fashion people, they're wearing all black.
Yeah.
And
oh yeah.
It's it's so interesting to me as I have looked at it more. And maybe my mind was just open to this a little bit more as I started doing personal development. There are certain stylists that will actually require that you wear all black on set. And it's like you're supposed to blend into the background. And I get it kind of being like a work uniform, but I also think that this is a really interesting thing in the fashion field, no matter if you're looking at an editor or a stylist, that a lot of them will wear black. And I think that just because you can style someone doesn't mean you've like done that work for yourself to really express yourself. Because there is a difference between fashion and style.
Totally, 100%. What would you say that difference is?
Well, I think style is really that soul expression of who you are. That's your being clear on who you are and what you're expressing in the world, where fashion really goes by the trends. So a lot of times that's dictated by someone else, like an Anna Wintour, really.
Yeah.
And so I would rather not be a slave to fashion, but I'd rather be loyal to my own style. And so even if that means that you might not look super on trend or whatever that is, to kind of more fashionable, I think style is ultimately about that self-expression for sure.
Totally. That's such a powerful distinction, because I know a lot of women who are just like, oh, like they don't consider themselves fashionable, right? Because that whole world just doesn't interest them, but that doesn't mean you can't express yourself.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's really funny about that? A lot of those women are going to the stores and buying stuff, and they're like, I have to wear. So like you have the closet full of stuff and nothing to wear. And what's so funny to me is that it's really that you keep buying all these trendy items.
Yeah.
Stores are now, especially with the rise of fast fashion, and so it's really funny that I'm like, all these women are like, oh, I'm like not stylish, and I'm like, you're always wearing trendy stuff. And I started to realize that it was because they were always buying trendy stuff because they weren't clear. If there's a trend, you like, I'm not saying don't do trends, believe me.
Yeah.
You know me well enough to be like, yes, that's true. I love being fashion forward, but that's part of my style, but it's not all the part of my style. And because I'm able to discern from like a soul level and my own intuition what works for me, I can go into a store and be like, no, nothing's working in the store, and not just buying something because it covers me up.
Right.
And it allows me to be more selective in what I'm wearing too. So even if I repeat stuff, it's, you know, I might add a different accessory or something, but to me, it doesn't matter because it's my style.
Right.
I'm not like wearing something to just not repeat an outfit or to be trendy.
Yeah. Because Anna Wintour said I had to, or whatever.
Yeah, because it was in this last issue of Vogue.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I think that's such an important distinction to make when we're talking about how we dress ourselves and how we're showing up in the world. It's a really, you know, if you're wearing something that you don't feel comfortable in, or that you're kind of just like, oh, like, okay, I guess this is good for now, like, it really shifts your energy.
Yeah, it really does. I feel like, you know, I noticed this for myself through my own journey within this.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started to wear more color, I started to show up in the world. But then more stuff got revealed to me that I was like felt really insecure about being seen. So then I went and did the inner work. And so I think style can be a really great way of personal transformation.
Yeah.
Because it allows us to see those things that we may be able to easily ignore until we really put ourselves out there. Especially as women leaders, it's a journey.
Yeah, 100%. So I love that you brought up intuition and choosing your style intuitively, because that's something we talk a lot about on this show. So I'm curious, like, what your connection to your intuition is like.
Yeah. Well, it's really funny because my body always seems to tell me.
Hey, it's different for everybody. Yeah.
Because, I mean, I am someone who, like, I mean, it's still a practice for me to continue to listen to my body. So to me, what I find I really have to do is a lot of body nurturing. Like, that's actually how I connect to my body. And last night I was actually looking, and I can send you the link if you want to put in like show notes. There's this thing like how to connect to your body or something based on your body, your star sign.
Oh, cool.
It was saying for Tauruses, we need to connect to our bodies, and that helps us feel like more expressed or something in the world. And it's so funny because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so spot on for me as a Taurus.
Yeah.
I find that I need to do things that connect to my body. So that means eating well and beautifully. And it doesn't mean just like salads all the time. Like, I love to cook. that's another like creative outlet for me.
Yeah.
And then also for myself, just having things that help me express my own like inner creative being.
Yeah.
And so I actually, when I need to just like figure out what's going on, I'm not a big like journaler. I don't know if it's because like it hurts my hand because I think too fast. I can't keep up.
Grip the pen. You're like,
like when I first started Exo Crystal Cave, it was actually what it was for me was really healing because I just was able to allow myself to process and really figure out what was going on in me. But I find that the more that I do things to nourish my body, the more intuitive I can be. So kind of going back to the notebook thing, like I'll draw and like kind of be creative in what's going on sometimes. And so sometimes I just personally use art as a way to connect with what's going on. Sometimes I might like write lists. I had a psychic when I came in, she was like, all I see are lists. And I'm like, yeah, that explains my brain. So sometimes like to me, it's not about writing a bunch of sentences. It's just about writing things down and being like, oh, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And one thing I also really just like to ask myself is like, okay, in your crystal fantasy world, what would this outcome be, or what would you really like? And normally that's what I really truly desire.
Yeah.
And when I don't listen to my intuition and I go against it, my body has a really nice way of telling me, like, throwing out my hip or.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, no, nothing about that. But I also my body, since it really will have those telltale signs, I have the Louise Hay app. So a lot of times that helps me dig a little bit further into what might actually be going on and help me explore what my body and soul is really trying to tell me about something.
Yeah, totally. Oh, is that Bijou?
Yeah. She's apparently saying hi to the person across the hall.
Oh, sweet. Bijou's Crystal's dog.
Yeah, 5-pound Pomeranian. 5 pounds as of last week, apparently.
Oh, so cute. But I think that's such an important point because we can get really stuck in our heads, right? In our just what you were saying about how Crystal Cave TV helped you just kind of process and figure out, like, okay, here's what I believe, here's what I think about this. I think that's so important because oftentimes we get stuck in the perfectionism or in the control and we don't even get started.
Yeah, Bijou agrees with you.
Yeah. Of course.
Of course. She's very intuitive too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really interesting that, like, for me, and this has been a big reflection point for me recently, is that when I originally started out Exo Crystal Cave, it was about my own self-expression, and then it turned into a business.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you merge your self-expression with business? And then also, like, I started to realize I started to try to people please and make everyone happy. And what I keep coming back to over and over again is, like, it really needs to be my own expression. See, Bijou feels so passionate about this.
Yeah, she's really chiming in. So cute.
I'm going to grab her really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, hold on. This is Bijou.
Hi. Hi, Pup. Aw, you're so happy.
Yeah. She just wanted attention.
She just wants to be loved. Awesome.
Right. The joys of working from home, right?
Yeah, totally. No, it's so good. So I am loving this conversation, and I think it's so important to to also recognize that oftentimes when we start being more visible, people-pleasing can be a really powerful saboteur.
Yep. Yeah. Turn around that I have many thoughts and experiences.
Yeah, so how do you deal with that?
Yeah. I do and I don't sometimes, but it's forever a journey, right? I know we're always saying, like, it's the journey, and it really is. Like, sometimes it's just part of the experience. But a lot of times my body will, like, I'll have like a twinge or like this weird feeling, and I've learned to pick up on that over the years. What has really started to happen for me in the last year, especially, like, for example, I had started out with this phrase called not so skinny.
Yeah.
And something I put together with a business coach because I was like, well, I don't feel like I'm just plus size. And I'd done all this work around it, and I was like, I'm healed. And,
100% enlightened.
Big joke ever. And then I'm like, I really want to like focus on the every woman, but I'm like, I don't feel like it's just the term plus size. Like, I'm like, I can style someone who's a size 8 or whatever. And I initially started to have it be around body size because that was my initial experience with a lot of this. So I came up with the term not so skinny when I was at a retreat, and I started using that for like 2.5 years. And last year it started to feel really off.
Yeah.
And I even had a program called Not So Skinny Style School, so, like the predecessor to Style Icon Academy. And although the program was really great, and it did take that like soul approach to style, what was missing for me was the message alignment. And I really I just felt like Not So Skinny ended up becoming another replacement for plus size.
Yeah.
And I started to realize instead of it being about the body, it was really about style and self-expression. So in a way of people pleasing, because I have my background in marketing, I was like, oh, plus size is like, a really large industry. Like, what is it? Like, I think I just saw something today on the Today Show. It was like a $16 billion industry, which seems even low for the fact that 2 out of 3 women are actually in the plus size category.
Size, yeah.
And so it like logically made sense that I was going to have my target market be plus size women. But the thing is, just like size women is such a broad, like the problem is plus size is such a broad range. So at the end of the day, it really wasn't the right group of women for me to be talking to. Like, I actually started to realize through running Not So Skinny Style School that the women I loved attracting in were really soul-based women. Like, they're people, maybe they weren't quite in tap with their intuition, but that's something that they were really, like, aiming to do, whether they outwardly knew it or not. A lot of them were working. I did really well with health coaches, and I really liked actually working with people who had worked with health coaches because my approach is very complementary to that. And so I started to realize, like, okay, who do I really like working with? Yeah. So it's like, obviously I don't regret having the Not So Skinny phrase because it was part of the journey. It led me to the Style Icon messaging. But I started to realize, like, what my bigger message was about women stepping out and being their whole selves, like being the sovereign queens that they are and expressing themselves like style icons. Because of my work with celebrities, I really feel like everyday people are no different. I mean, we are no different.
Yeah.
And the only difference is that celebrities are putting themselves out there. So why don't we all help ourselves and actually allow ourselves to step into that inner icon, that like fullest self-expression of ourselves. So
totally.
It's that, like, that whole messaging thing, I think, was a big people pleasing.
It's what you should do, right? And like the logical makes sense versus what your soul or your intuition wants to do.
Yeah. Like, I actually sat, and this is the interesting thing, like my soul told me one thing, and then I'm sitting in New York City last year as I'm like, this isn't right. I'd already decided to drop the Not So Skinny. Yeah. And my friend told me I was a complete idiot. Like, she said those words to me. This is a friend from prep school. And she was like, you're an idiot. Like, if you like were making millions of dollars at this, like, you wouldn't care. And I was like, no, because something would still feel wrong.
Right.
Really interesting because it's like, it's a friend of time and not of like mind with this. And it's funny because she was one of the first people that knew that I was going to styling school when I went, almost 5 years ago now. Yeah. At the 5-year anniversary of pursuing this full time. And
woohoo! Yeah.
And I remember like also sitting at a restaurant in downtown New York and saying to her, like, this is where I was at the time. I'm like, the plus size makes the most sense. Like, that's what I should really focus my business on. And so it was really interesting to have her say that again, but I had evolved in my own thinking since then and my own being. And I just knew so strongly in myself that it was right, because I could have listened to her and been like, oh, yeah, I really should do that.
Yeah.
But I started listening to myself, and I was like, this is why I believe this. And I started to just get stronger in my convictions. Not like you ever need to rationalize yourself, but it allowed her and other people to understand a little bit more about what I was doing, and like I was just able to like better express it to everyone when I shifted.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, because especially when we're first getting started, it's really scary and really vulnerable, right? And especially if I know I like ran to all my friends. I was like, okay, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Like getting advice from all these places, when really the only thing that matters is, what feels good to you, especially when you're first getting started.
Yeah. Well, and even during that time, like, not to like belabor this point, but
yeah.
Like I checked into the Ritz, and I like had been out here in Los Angeles for the winter, because I at that point had owned a house in upstate New York, which I just sold a few months ago and moved here full time. But I was like checking out LA to be like, do I really want to come back? And I knew in my soul that I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And then all this stuff was going on with my business too. So I was like, okay, I'm going to check out of my Airbnb. I went into the Ritz-Carlton with like the last $500 I had available on my credit card at that time. And I ended up getting upgraded to the penthouse and penthouse level. Yeah. And I actually got that room again when I was moving here to LA, which was a really fun full circle moment, because when I was in that room, I just remember really making a commitment to myself. And it was like such a strong spiritual hotel stay. I really made this commitment to myself to let myself be fully expressed and accept nothing but the highest level. It was like, there is no mistake, I'm on the highest floor of this hotel. And then it was
metaphors everywhere. Yeah.
I kept getting upgraded to like high floors for a couple months after that when I was traveling. And so it was the funniest thing. I'm like, okay, universe,
I get it. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that like was actually like a really fun, nice reminder as I was feeling a little unsteady to be fully expressed in, I finally I recorded a video for Crystal Cave TV saying like, I'm coming out, I'm dropping the not so skinny, and it was supposed to go out later than it was supposed to. And then I was at an event in San Francisco, the Live Free Retreat, which I always like to go to, and all these people were coming up and saying stuff about the not so skinny, and like this had been 2 months since I decided to do it.
Yeah.
And drop it, and like I felt really good in it. So then it was like such an awkward conference, because I'm like, do I tell people about this? Do I wait for the announcement? So I started to reveal it, and then the next day, both of my team members at the time were based in San Francisco, so we were doing a team day, and I'm like, the first thing we're doing is sending out this dropping the not so skinny thing.
We're done.
And I was like, I literally just need to come out, because I felt like the longer I put off that, which is still like a little bit of probably my perfectionist side of me wanting to put a few things in order before I did it, I was just like, no, I just want to be expressed. I want people to know what was going on. And that video within like 48 hours, I did boost it a little bit on Facebook, but it got played like 13,000 times.
Wow, that's amazing.
A certain amount. And if anybody knows anything about Facebook, like that's
amazing.
Like it was pretty good that I kept like more people, and I got all this amazing feedback from people around it, how they agreed with me that there shouldn't be the separation between plus and straight sizing. Like, your size is just your size.
I think that's such a powerful message, and one that can really resonate with people, because, just inherently the divisiveness is so toxic.
Yeah. And I have to say, the other thing that was kind of delaying me is that I decided to go to design school.
Yeah.
In Italy last summer, and I was delaying telling my family that I was doing it. Because when I lived in Albany, they were really my like in-person support system there.
Yeah.
So although like you knew about it probably before my mom, and like a few of our friends and like my immediate team, like it took me like a month to tell my family, which is like unusual.
Yeah.
or was especially at that time. And so, it, it was funny. I was like, I just need to like fully come out of this closet and be all of who I am. And it's not like, it's funny because like growing up with a grandfather who had like a public company, it, so many things were always so secret. So sometimes I feel like I'm kind of the opposite of like, okay, if I'm keeping a secret, it's like not being the fullest expression.
Here we go.
Of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's like, right, if, sorry?
It was my messaging. It was my mission. So when someone's like coming up and they're like, oh, plus size, I'm like,
Ooh. But I think that's such an interesting point because, like, that's fear, right? And when we're making big moves, fear comes up. It's an inherent part of the journey. So how did you get through that?
A lot of crying.
As one does.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting because I think my whole experience of the 2 years I lived in Albany actually really brought me to fully accepting my whole range of human emotions. So I really got okay crying. Like, I got really into shower crying at a certain point. I call it. I'm like, I had my daily shower cry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the most efficient way of crying.
I'm already wet.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And it's like, I actually have gotten to the point now where I'm like, if I'm not feeling something, then I'm not actually living to my fullest potential. And it's so opposite of where I was just like a year or two ago, even. Sometimes it's just by taking that action, like being in motion without ignoring what's going on inside. So I'm such a go-getter.
Yeah. Super
persistent, super ambitious. Like, I will use the word mogul to describe myself. I know we've even talked to you.
Yeah, girl.
Like, even last week, weren't you like, well, you're building an empire.
Yeah. I said, you're a mogul.
Yeah. I'm incredibly ambitious. So I want things to go really fast sometimes. And a lot of time the fear shows up in negative self-talk, kind of procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, like, I start to get really emotional if I'm ignoring myself. And so when I'm going into a deep emotional thing, I think it's just normally for me, I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to see what the true issue is and actually heal it. Because a lot of stuff still comes up around visibility for me, around like if the decision is actually the right decision.
Yeah.
Sometimes the fear does come up in indecisiveness, and I feel really stuck. And I find that as soon as, like, this even happened recently. I had a really rough March, and, my grandfather passed away. Bijou was attacked at daycare, and then I threw out my hip, like, all within, like, the month. It was really intense, and I was, like, finding myself a couple weeks ago feeling really confused and overwhelmed and just feeling ultimately stuck. And a lot of it was fear. Like, I was scared to make the wrong decision. I was scared to go in the wrong direction. And finally I was like, the joy of making the decision is you can go with it. And then if it's not right, you can always make another
change.
Decision.
Yeah, totally.
Like nothing in life is really permanent. Maybe except for like a tattoo, but even those can be removed these days. So, it's like, there are certain decisions we can make, like getting a dog or having children, that you can't really undo. But for the most part, most of these little decisions that I find myself like being obsessed and in my head about, once I start taking action and really being like, okay, what do I truly want, and going for it, even if it feels freaking scary, I start to feel lighter and just have all this momentum. And even this weekend, like last week, my brand is still a little bit based on that Not So Skinny brand on my website. And I'm like, I'm just going to start redoing everything myself, not make it into like a big thing. So I started just trusting myself and taking small actions toward that and breaking it down. So for me, I'm a J. I need plans. I need to like get everything out of my head so then it doesn't feel so jumbled too. So
totally.
Just like really learning how your process works. Like for me, I need structure and also like action with space in between. Like instead of having to get it done in like 2 seconds, I'm like, okay, maybe I need a couple of days to do this now. Like,
maybe I won't get a whole website done in a day, but maybe 4.
And I still did that to myself this weekend, but last night I was like, no, I really wanted to spend the afternoon with my friend.
Yeah.
And we went and got mani-pedis, and it actually, like, a lot of stuff, giving myself more space over this weekend to do the foundational, redo of my visual branding felt so good. And I had some creative ahas even around my clothing line that I'm
good. Yeah.
With it. So it was really cool to take that space. Like, you know, I think it's such a gift to have that now, because before I would just force things out. And I think that's where things started to become more logic versus intuition.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful, and it's such a dance, right? Of like, I basically read like 3 Stephen Pressfield books over the weekend about resistance and overcoming resistance, and his philosophy can feel very rigid and regimented of like, you must show up and like resistance will kill you and all this stuff. But there was one anecdote that I thought was so powerful of training horses and how like, like every day they show up, they train, but they make it fun and it has to be enjoyable, because otherwise horses are so sensitive, like they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
And yeah. Sorry.
I'm like, I must be a horse. I think we're all horses.
Well, I think highly intuitive, creative, entrepreneurs are the same way, because we didn't get into this to just create another stressful corporate job, right? It's
right.
That dance and that balance.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing with my grandfather just passing away, like, he was a really amazing entrepreneur, and the one phrase that I know, like, I've talked about a lot recently is he would always say, like, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And even last year, after I dropped the Not So Skinny, I, like, started to realize, like, it wasn't feeling fun.
Yeah.
And I even noticed this sometimes when I've gone into WeWork. Like, I need my environment to feel fun and light and bright. And part of it's my being. And then the other part of it, for me, especially probably because I'm visually oriented, is, like, my environment. So even just what's immediately around me, like, I'll curate it to make sure that it feels, for me, conducive to whatever I need to create. And also I'm a big fan of, like, music. Yeah. That was the business my grandfather was in. So he was naturally dealing with a really fun industry, and I'm dealing with fashion. Like, I don't have, like, super high pressure of, like, having to save a life, like Grey's Anatomy.
My favorite show.
Yeah, we both love Grey's Anatomy. But I love that song too that they played in one of the first seasons, like How to Save a Life. But it's like, it's not brain surgery. I'm not, like, trying to save someone's life, but I am trying to have someone live their best life. And that is an important thing. And sometimes it can feel really heavy of, like, oh my God, how do I best communicate this, like, really intense thing that, like, saved my own life? And I feel like it can become really serious. And what I've started to realize is, like, I do love the phrase, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. But I think we have to realize, like, it might be a lot of work, but we can make the work fun. Like, totally. How we approach it is all us. And my grandfather loved what he did, even if it meant working 24 hours straight, which I don't necessarily think is healthy. And he started...
Don't recommend, but yeah.
But, he was in the hospital a couple years ago, and he's, like, telling the nurse about how he used to work from, like, Sunday into Monday when he had a board meeting. And I thought it was the funniest thing, because, like, that's so the masculine, right? Yeah. So he loved what he did, and that was his why. His why was driving him all the time. And he was so clear on what he was creating in the world. And I started to realize, like, that's what was missing for me, is I wasn't so clear on my why and having that inform my every day. So I always have to keep re-enrolling myself in my why. And part of that is creative expression. So, like, if my house where I'm working from does not feel creatively expressed, I might have to do some things to shift that for myself. Sometimes that's my procrastination, being like, I'm going to shift all the furniture in my apartment at midnight instead of going to sleep. But actually, like, recently I did that, and it actually made a whole difference in the flow of my apartment.
Made you feel better, yeah.
Feel better. So the last 2 weeks I've actually been more productive, because I was ignoring that part of me that wanted to do it, and apparently felt like it was appropriate to do it at midnight.
Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah. I think it's such an I think that's just, like, it's a powerful, it can be hard to identify, right? Like, your intuition and your balance and how you work best, but I feel like once you do, it's like unlocking that key to everything, right, that your soul wants to express. So
yeah, and knowing your Myers-Briggs is really important. Like, I'm an ENFJ, so I need to be around humans and I need structure. Like, those are two things that are really important for me. So really getting to know yourself through something like that is also great.
So powerful too. Yeah. It's so good. Crystal, thank you so much for your time. This has been such a fun conversation. I have one more question for you. This show is all about making your magic in the world. So I'm so curious what making magic means to you.
Yeah. I know. It's like, it's funny because I'm like, there's so many things I can think about, but like, what is the common thread?
Yeah.
All of this. I mean, ultimately what I love about the word magic and, like, you know, synchronicity in our life is really just being open to what life reveals to you. You know, I think a lot, like, I'm very clear on what I like, what I want in my life, but although I'm, like, fairly certain of how certain things will be will happen and how I'll be able to live my why in this life, I'm also open to the fact that it can change, and it's basically its own living and breathing organism. So to me, magic is really, you know, getting clear on how you want to be expressed, but then leaving it open to a little bit of faith and trust that everything will unfold exactly how it needs to. And I think when we let go of that control, let go of, like, what I always called, like, my obsession with perfection, you open yourself up to, I think, joy much greater than you could have ever experienced trying to control things. So to me, that's very magical.
That's so beautiful and such a good reminder. Thank you. So if listeners want to find you online, where should they go?
Yeah, so they can go to exocrystalcave.com.
Yeah.
You can go to Crystal Cave TV on YouTube. I have a bunch of YouTube videos, and Natalie and I actually just recorded a bunch more this weekend. So over this late spring and summer, I'll be revealing a few more. I had been on a little bit of a hiatus.
But the new videos are magical.
Yeah. And speaking of, like, you know, truly being yourself and self-expression, like, these are, like, the least scripted videos I've ever done, and I honestly think they're the best. And also on all social media platforms, I love Instagram, Pinterest, I think is really fun. I'm at Exo Crystal Cave on every single platform, basically.
Amazing. So branded. I love it.
And also follow Bijou at basically Bijou. She's like, what? I'm in the spot.
Wouldn't want to follow her.
Yes.
So good.
You want cute dog pictures. So.
Who doesn't want cute dog pictures?
Right.
Thank you so much, Crystal. It's been so fun talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.